Welcome into episode 600 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian D. Felice, joined by Bridget Brew and Scott McLaughlin, probably for about 500 times too many for their liking. But here we are. Here we are, guys.
I'm gonna say that's a lot. That's a lot. You guys have dealt with me for a long time.
Yeah, and we didn't know what to think of you at first. We were like, "Who is this guy?" Me and Brian were
I still don't know what to think of you, to be honest.
Well, wait till the beginning of the season when you see the new stickers, and you can maybe form an opinion. I actually know what you think of me. It's like I can't believe they stuck me with this person.
Can you guys remember? Can you guys remember our first episode together and what number it was of the Skate Pod?
Wasn't it only in like the 60s or something like that?
I was gonna say 40 something.
Yeah, it was low.
It's 42, episode 42. Do you remember where we recorded?
Yeah, was it in the Red Sox studio or was it in Bill's? Yep. Yeah, it was in the Red Sox studio.
Red Sox studio. I had known Bridget in person at that point for at least a solid year plus. And Scott I'd only known through text and email. And then when he walked into Red Sox studio and there was that big light shining on him and the halo over his head, I said, "Oh my God, look at this absolute stud eating popcorn walking in."
No, I just remember trying to figure out his sense of humor because I wasn't sure if he at first I wasn't sure if he had one.
I don't. I never laugh.
Oh, it was probably because I just was telling crappy jokes, but eventually we realized that Scott did have a similar sense of humor, luckily. So otherwise, I don't think we would have made it to 600, and he definitely would have pushed me off the 9th floor by now. So
thank God he hasn't.
Happy 600, guys. Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. We took mailbag questions because we wanted to involve our listeners in episode 600, and we got some good questions. We actually got quite a few, so thanks for sending them in. But we want to do opening shifts first.
Yeah, but shout out to the listeners though.
Yeah,
they're a huge part of this. Like, you don't get to 600 if you don't have listeners who keep coming back, tell friends, like spread the word, send us mailbag questions to
stop me at TD.
To stay engaged, to program our entire summer, really, for the most part. So
and the people who I'm encouraging this. I get stopped sometimes at rinks or even I got stopped at the Woo Sox this year by fans that said they listened to the podcast. So come say hi to me if you see me running around BU or TD Garden or what have you. And you can say hi to Scott too. He's a little bit more of a diva, but he will say hi.
I was gonna say you're only allowed to say hi to me if you have popcorn or beer.
That's why I think it's fitting to have the mailbag on 600. Not that we haven't had a shortage of those this summer, but for all the reasons you guys just said, like it's 600 to us, it's 600 to you all listening and watching, and there's listeners who predate us on the Skate Pod. Ken Laird, Matt Kalman, those two were the OGs of this program. We took it over in retrospect pretty early on, but there was 41 episodes before the three of us were here, and I'm sure some of you listening were part of that journey as well. So happy 600 to everybody involved. And yes, we have a pretty extensive mailbag today, but opening shifts, Bridget, Scott.
Yeah, I'll go first. Some news Thursday morning. The Bruins are going to Germany next season. They'll play 2 games in Munich. Date's not set yet. Opponent's not set yet. But it'll be the first ever regular season games played in Munich. Not the first ones played in Germany. There will be games in Germany this season as well. Ottawa and Chicago are playing in Dusseldorf. And then next season, there's also going to be 2 other games. Edmonton is going to Cologne for 2 games, which is Leon Draisaitl's hometown. Bruins get Munich, which is JJ Peterka's hometown. Mako Sturm from about an hour away. So obviously, we've talked about before, Bruins have German connections. It makes sense to have them as a team going over there with Sturm, with Peterka, who, unless things go really poorly, you expect both of them to still be in the picture next year. Potentially a Lucas Reichel if he, can break out this season. But pretty cool. The Bruins have not been overseas since 2018 when they played 2 preseason games in China. Prior to that, the Bruins famously started the 2010-11 season in Prague, in Czech Republic. They played preseason games in both the Czech Republic and in Belfast, Northern Ireland that year. So they've gone international a couple times before, but not by the time we get to next year, it'll have been 9 years since the last time they went. So NHL, this global series, they have these games every year, whether it's Germany, Czech Republic, Sweden, Finland, Australia. I think they're planning to go to, like, bunch of different places, clearly trying to expand their footprint, and the Bruins will be part of that sometime next season.
Yeah, I don't think people realize too, like, how much people are hockey fans and watch the NHL in like Germany and Switzerland. I got more of a sense of it when the college kids went and played in Switzerland this year for the selects, and those stadiums packed for that. I imagine this will be another good atmosphere. Hey, Scott, are we going? Because if they put this in Oktoberfest in Munich.
Where's my invite?
I mean,
everybody.
Hey,
okay, Ryan, you can go.
Listen, I might not get the EDI credentials, but I'll tag along for a trip.
Okay, yeah.
If it overlaps with Oktoberfest, I don't know if I'm making it to the games.
yeah. But like that would be such a great like trip for a fan to take if they were coming from the US and they want to go experience that. I've never experienced that. I had a trip planned for that, and then the pandemic hit, so I didn't end up going. But it just seems like it would be a whole fun event if it coincided, and even if it doesn't, you can kind of make your own little, just go out to all the beer gardens and have a good time. But no, that sounds like fun. I mean, that's a trip that I would love to go on. I don't know, like genuinely. Like I'm not just saying like, oh, I hope, but I think like when I saw that announced, I was like, well, it looks like I'm going to Germany next year. So
I've definitely like already started thinking about it. Don't know if I'll definitely be able to pull it off, but it's bouncing around my brain already.
Maybe we have some German listeners that may be able to attend again. I mean, we know we have some listeners in Switzerland. They've sent us, chocolates before, and they're great to talk to. And until we hear who the Bruins are playing, I'm just going to say it's a long trip for a black and gold scrimmage that they could have done in Providence. But it is cool. I remember when the Bruins went to Prague, and Scott, you mentioned they played in Belfast. It was a non-NHL team, and I remember I was in high school and I was saying to myself, I know it's just exhibition, but you better not be that one team to lose to a non-NHL team. No disrespect to the other professional leagues. They are professional hockey players, but it would be like an NFL team losing to a CFL team. And didn't that happen? Wasn't there an NHL team in the last 5 or 6 years? I forget who it was, but they were playing, like an exhibition game, and they lost to somebody. It was a non-NHL team. I'll look it up if nobody knows off the top of the head, but I do know that it happened. I just forget who it was. Because I remember saying like, oh, thank God that wasn't the Bruins, because they would have gotten torched for it.
Not a good way to start the year off.
No, pretty humbling.
You're like, well, there goes the season.
Yeah, let me look it up while you guys are talking, but I know it happened.
Yeah, and just to note too, so like a lot of these trips have been to open the season, but the NHL has started putting more in the middle of the season as well. Like I was looking at Ottawa and Chicago going this year, and it's in December, and basically they have almost a full week off on each end of the trip. So it's like sort of the 2 Germany games centered between like 5 to 6 days off on either side, obviously to accommodate for the travel. And I think it leads into the Christmas break. I think those games this year are like December 17th and 8th or 19th, something like that. They're close to Christmas. So, which would also probably be a pretty cool time to go over there. So that's,
and it coincides with the break in the college hockey season.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Bridget's going either way. But yeah, that was a cool announcement to get this morning. And then I'm sure when we see Peterka next, we'll have to ask him about that and about what he thinks the atmosphere will be like for that. You know, who he's gonna have there. Like, there's gonna be a lot to talk about with some of the German guys. And I even heard, to tie this back into the Jimmy Fund, because I know we're going to talk about some comments there. Sturm talked about him getting the Medal of Honor in Germany, and how it's a lot of the reason for that was actually his off the ice charity that he started for kids with cancer when he was 25 years old. And so it was basically about like the impact that he's had, besides just it includes his playing and coaching career, like inspiring kids to play, you know, but also a big part was the charitable stuff that he's been doing since he was a player, all the way back when he was 25 years old. So and obviously we know how much he cares about German hockey and the national team and being from there and the pride that he has there. So I know for him, he's going to be super excited to go play in Munich as well, and to just see the two worlds collide. You know, his upbringing and his background meeting like his current job is probably going to feel surreal for him. So we know there's plenty of German connections on the team, and those guys will be happy. And then maybe everybody else will just get to learn what Schweinhaxen is and get to eat some delicious German food, because I personally wish there were more German restaurants around, because I think they make really awesome food and it's impossible to get here. And if you don't know what Schweinhaxen is, it's also translates to pork knuckle. It is delicious.
Sounds great.
It is.
Sounds
it's really good.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not entirely sure if this is what I was thinking of, but I'm going to say that it was. The Flyers lost an exhibition game 4-3 back in 2019 to a team in the Swiss National League. I'm going to butcher their name, but it's Lausanne Hockey Club. So like
Lucerne,
I don't know. But in any event,
Jeremy Lozon, he was a defenseman.
Oh boy. All right. So Marco Sturm spoke during the Jimmy Fund Nesson EEI radio telethon, and my opening shift has to do with just a brief comment he made on the depth and the competition going into training camp, and how brief training camp is. We've talked about the abundance of defensemen for this Bruins roster heading into the season. Obviously, McAvoy's out the first 6 games, but yeah, Marco just said it's a short camp. He's glad he was hired last offseason, not this offseason, because it's even tougher for new hires to get a grip for their team in training camp this year. And he just talked about how the guys have to be ready off the jump. It's not no breaking news, nothing we wouldn't expect Marco to say. But if a Freddie Brunet, if James Hagens, you know, guys that, you know, Hagen's probably more so than Brunet, but guys that we expect to make a push to make this team, like short training camp or not, they have to make an impression in whatever ice time that they get early. And, you know, Marco said it's really up to the players to dictate these types of things. So again, a message that's pretty consistent with any head coach, and certainly Marco Sturm. But hey, it's not often that we hear from Bruins coaching and management brass in August. So that's my opening shift.
Yeah, definitely want to get into that more, because Cam Neely also touched a bit on competition. I'll save it because I know we have a mailbag question that touches on some of that too. But yeah, I am going to be fascinated by training camp this year. And I think like almost what Marco Sturm kind of starts with as his lines and pairs, I think it'll be pretty telling, because we've seen in the past, Jim Montgomery especially was big on like mixing and matching early in training camp, and, you know, put a kid with a veteran, and like then, you know, maybe after 4 or 5 days start figuring things out. I kind of feel like you just don't have time to do that now. Like you almost have to start camp with, hey, this is what I think my opening night lineup might be. let me see how it looks. And then if I have to adjust, I'll adjust. But like, you almost don't have time with like, I'm going to mix and match for, 4 or 5 days. And then I'll start to pare it down.
So do you guys want to get into the mailbag right now? I know our first question does allude to the kid. Oh, Bridget, yes?
You skipped me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bridget. I'm sorry. I was looking up the NHL team who lost. I thought you were finishing up yours. Go ahead.
No. Mine is another thing that come out of the Jimmy Fund, and I do want to comment on your opening shift as well later, Brian, about the competition part of camp. And hopefully it doesn't put too much pressure. I'm wondering like how much pressure affects some of the younger guys that they know they have less time. But anyway, my opening shift has to do with something Cam Neely said during the Jimmy Fund when he was asked about naming a captain, which has obviously been a storyline since they traded away Brad Marchand over a year ago. They decided not to have a captain at all last year. That the A's were worn by Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Hampus Lindholm for most of the season. And it just, they ended the season, and we've been talking about, well, maybe come September, we get this announcement. Maybe, just thinking they've had enough time to probably get a good grasp of who that next guy would be. But Cam Neely's statement on it was less definitive and goes back to maybe they're not going to name another a captain for another season. So this was the quote. Scott, you tweeted it out if people wanted to look at it. He said, "I don't know if you necessarily need to have a guy unless there is that guy that really stands out." And to me, I don't know why, because I haven't been on this side for the entire last season, but I'm starting to get annoyed by the idea that there still might not be a captain. Like you haven't had time to figure that out. Like you haven't seen enough from somebody. I almost feel like at this point it's insulting to the guy that you do choose, right? Like, how has it been this amount of time? And they still hopefully name somebody in September, and he mentioned they're gonna have a chat, a sit down soon with him and Sweeney and Sturm, and have a conversation about it and see what everybody thinks and everybody wants. But I'm frustrated with the fact that this just like there's no sign still like, oh, we're going to name someone. It's still an if, and I thought we were past the if. I don't know. So anyway, I know Scott disagrees with me, but I just think that it's time for them to name a captain. I don't want the if game anymore. And both of those guys we've talked about, both McAvoy and Pastrnak, are qualified, and whoever you choose is probably going to do a great job. So if you know who the guy is, I don't know why they're still waiting and trying to figure. I don't know if they're worried about offended the other guy so bad that it causes a problem. Like, I don't get the sense that either of those guys would handle it that way. I don't know. Something frustrated me about it, guys. And I don't normally get fired up about it. But anyway, I know Scott disagrees with me, so I want to hear from him.
Well, I'll save my counter until we read Ben's question, our first email, because it ties in. First, though, I do want to just say I'm positive that listeners of this podcast were among the thousands who donated during the Jimmy Fund Radio Telethon. So I do want to say thank you. We raised $7.1 million this year. Actually, it got in like the couple days since, it got elevated to 7.3 with the donations that kept trickling in. So 7.3 million, which is $1.5 million more than the previous record, which we set last year. So just crazy. I mean,
I have chills right now.
I've been doing this for, like I've been part of this event for 13 years now. And I remember for most of that time, it was like, hey, if you top 3 million, that's awesome, right? Like everyone's happy if you top 3 million. And now we're talking 7.3. Like, it's just mind blowing. And like there were a couple $1 million donations in there. Rob Hale, one of the Celtics minority owners, is one of them. Another was just a family, obviously very well off, who was moved to donate $1 million. But even like if you take those out,
Wow.
Even the $5+ million without that is insane and like borderline record setting. So it was awesome to be a part of. There's so many incredible moments over the course of those 2 days. We've already touched on Neely stopping by, Sturm stopping by as it relates to the Bruins. Jeremy Swayman and Charlie McAvoy were both there. Swayman went on both stations, NESN and EEI. McAvoy just went on NESN, but really, really awesome. Just cool to see. So again, anyone listening who did donate, then thank you.
1,000%. And we've all been touched, by cancer in some way, shape, or form, through friends, loved ones, whatever. And it's until you kind of experience the proximity of what that can do. It's the individuals that are battling and fighting through it, but it's the families as well. And the donations go towards so much. It's of course, research, cancer research, and patient care, but family care as well. And there are so many little minute actions that money is allocated towards, like these donations. It's incredible. And when you really think about it's $50 here, $100 there, $150 from everybody who donated to get to the $5+ million mark before those generous donations you mentioned, Scott. It's incredible. So anyway, Bridget, I'm sure you have some thoughts too.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've always loved being part of it. When I've been in different roles for it over the years, and it's always like eye-opening. And though it's such a heavy subject, the general mood is always positivity. So, and it's nice to see also the way the players interact with the event. So like I've seen Swayman take pictures with a bunch of kids who, were going through this and their families. And it's got this air of positivity around and hope around it, which is always, I think, the main takeaway. And I do think there's a lot of people in Boston sports that have spent their time, have been affected by cancer, have spent their time trying to figure out ways to help other people who go through it to have a better experience than the one they had. And just even at Tufts Medical Center in Boston, which unfortunately my grandmother was in this week because she has cancer. There, that whole hallway is the Neely house, and it's housing. It's hotel rooms essentially, and living spaces for people who are in the family members, who are trying to stay nearby and be with their family members while they go through treatment. So there's certainly a lot of different people who are involved in it, but it was honestly, that number was crazy because, like Scott said, like my first one that we did, I think, was like just under 3 million, which was probably like 7 years ago or so. And the amount that it's jumped up has really, it's encouraging. So anyway.
Well, I'll just say quickly too, like, and Bridget, because you just mentioned that, your family's going through something right now too. But for anybody out there listening, like whether it's you or a loved one going through something, just know that you're not going through it alone, and that people are always there for you and thinking of you. And you just know that, because it's when, we live our lives and we get so focused in the here and now and what's, right in front of our face. And we're kind of self-absorbed. That's human nature. You focus on yourself, but then, life doesn't really, doesn't know like any boundaries. And it, when life hits, it hits, and you don't expect it when it does, but just know that, when it does, if it ever does, like, you're not alone. So, that's that. But any final thoughts before we go into the mailbag here?
No, I think you guys said it well. I'm good with going into the mailbag.
All right, so let's kick things off with Ben, and he did have a few questions from Cam Neely's interview during the Jimmy Fund Radio Telethon, and the first one is
which by the way, I will say, I'll preface with it was a pretty cool. I think they're on for about a half hour, but it was like a leadership panel. It was crossover, so co-hosted on EI and on Nesson. It was Rich Shirton-Lieb and Tom Caron, and it was Cam Neely along with Craig Breslow, Kurt Anolfo from the Revs, Daniel Marmer from the Boston Fleet, and then the GM of the Boston Legacy as well, Dome Gosk is his name. So that's pretty cool. Is the five of them just kind of talking about like kind of being team builders and leaders in Boston. And like I said, that was for about a half hour. So if people wanted to go back and listen to the whole thing, if you missed it, you can.
All right. So Ben says a couple of questions here, but a few of them kind of tie together. The first question is, and this is kind of to Bridget's opening shift. So this is what got her antennas going today. It's got her fuming. Aren't the Bruins a bit of a joke if they don't name a captain for a second straight season? I would rather have Zadorov be named captain if they don't think Pastrnak or McAvoy are captain material, because that's what it's implying at this point. Do you guys want me to go on to the second question, or do you want me to stop there?
No, let's start here. So
okay.
Here's my main counter to, because it's not just Bridget and it's not just Ben in this email. I've seen a lot of this on social media, like fans getting all worked up about this, to which I would say, if they go into the season without a captain, if they still don't name one, yeah, I think it's probably worth getting worked up over. But I don't love like ripping people for something that hasn't happened yet. We never thought they were going to name a captain in August. I've said, or at least I didn't. I've said all along, I think they'll name it during training camp when the whole team is there. That's how they've done in the past. So, like, I just have a hard time getting worked up over this, because I'm like, Cam Neely didn't really say anything. Like he was asked, the question was, do you need to name a captain? And he responded this way, just kind of, down the middle, leaving the door open, saying, no, you don't have to if you don't have the guy. He didn't say we don't have the guy. He said you don't have to if you don't have that person. So I just feel like we're kind of taking it a step too far and like making some assumptions about, oh, Cam Neely doesn't think they have the guy or whatever. And I'm just like, my opinion on this has all along been they are going to name a captain, and I still think that. So, like, will I be worked up and react differently if they don't name one? Yeah, we will definitely revisit. But I still think it's going to happen. So I just, like, I can't get worked up now because I never expected it to happen now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the question was about before the season, and the answer was not a definitive, oh, we're going to name someone. I mean, maybe it's just politics to just, try to not lead it down a certain road and get into a conversation about, him trying to get him to admit who it is. But if it is true that they haven't met about it yet, it feels like it's about time, right? Like we're almost at the end of August. Like those conversations should be happening right now. And hopefully now that Sturm is back, and presumably Sweeney's around and they're all back in Boston getting ready for the upcoming training camp, these conversations should be happening right now. And I'm not like mad. I think that my thing is I'm worried. I think I'm just worried that we're going to have the same situation as last year. And I just don't think I think it's not productive at this point. I think you went through it last year. It worked okay. There wasn't a huge, it wasn't a huge narrative because it just seemed like they were dealing with it. They were handling it. Both guys were taking parts of the leadership. But I don't understand if they do 2 years in a row go with this style, this system. It is very unconventional. It was unconventional when they did it last year. And I just think it's time. And so I'm not like gonna stand here and be like, oh, I'm so mad at them. Like, why would they do? Like, I don't think it's anger. It's just like frustration with the idea that it's still apparently an option to not have a captain this year. I would have thought at this point in the process they had decided we are going to have one. Maybe they hadn't decided who yet. But yeah, and I think it's frustrating as well because, like I said in my opening shift, I think both guys are qualified, and both whoever you choose is who is going to handle it well, right? I do think it's seems like Pastrnak is ahead in that kind of a race for the C. At this point in his career, just he's a little bit further along in terms of developing as a leader, and in terms of his I think he's got learned a lot in the last few seasons about maturity and how to handle leadership. So I think most fans are probably thinking we'd be happy with either, or maybe some people have strong opinions either way, but just name someone, right? Just name, please. Just let's not do the whole thing. And I think that, to Ben's point, if you don't believe in either of them, like, still name who you do believe in. And I have a hard time seeing them name anybody besides those two. Zadorov would definitely be a dark horse candidate. Everybody talks about him being a leader, being vocal. But it's going to be one of those two guys, or it's going to be none, apparently. So I just think it's a worrying potential situation that the door is still open for the same, just to run back what they did with leadership last year.
So I have my theories, especially if they enter the season with no captain, and I'll get to that in a minute. But before I do, I just wanted to Scott's point, they could know who their captain is going to be right now behind closed doors, but they aren't announcing it until training camp. So until we get to that point where they enter the season without a captain, I'll reserve my harsh judgments or my true thoughts on it, because if they announce David to be the captain, or Charlie, in the next couple of weeks or next month, well, then a lot of this conversation becomes moot. To Bridget's point, though, and I don't expect you guys to remember this off the top of your head, but I do want to do a quick callback to May, which was the post-season management, ownership, media availability at the end of the season. And Cam Neely was asked about this topic, including, how would it affect one person or the other if the other player got picked. And Cam talked about in that press conference, he said, we want to name a captain. And then he said, we're going to have conversations throughout the summer about that. That was back in May. So to Bridget's point, now here in August, and maybe it's because Marco hasn't been around, but there's something called technology and Zoom and phone calls. It sounds like maybe they haven't had those conversations that much to this point, or maybe they have. I'm just pointing out what Cam said back in May. So I just want to try to, if there's any contradictory statements here in August, I just want to point those out. And then I want to say it was Tara Sullivan who asked these questions back then. She had a follow-up, and she asked about Charlie McAvoy and his leadership growth this past year, and Cam pretty much talked about how Charlie didn't have the opportunity to show himself as the ultimate leader, or he didn't have the optimal opportunity to showcase his leadership skills because of on and off ice issues this past season. I just wanted to lay out that context and now throw it back to you guys.
Yeah, all fair points. And really that Neely comment after the season is one of the reasons I've believed all along that they will name a captain, because the president of the team literally said he wants to. And usually the president of the team gets what he wants. So, yeah, I guess the way I view him saying, Don, Marco, and I are going to talk soon is, I think that's probably more the like, okay, let's actually finalize this and come up with our plan now. To your point, it is worth noting Marco Sturm just got back to Boston within the past week. There's an event last week that he was initially scheduled to be at and ended up missing because of flight issues coming back from Europe. So he just got back. You know, the Jimmy Fund Radio Telethon was his first kind of like public appearance since then. So yeah, I'm guessing they want to have that talk in person as they start to go through team meetings. There's a lot of people take time off, you know, late July through mid-August. That's always kind of a down point in the NHL calendar. You know, so I will say, like, again, I think it's going to happen, which is why I'm not getting worked up over the possibility that it doesn't. But I will say, if it doesn't happen, like, we can and should go back to these Neely comments from Jimmy Fund, where I think the quote that is going to get recycled will be, I don't know if you necessarily need to have a guy unless there is that one guy that really stands out, which means if you don't name a C, to me, that tells me that you don't think you have the one guy that really stands out. And that is, to me, that would actually be pretty damning of both Pastrnak and McAvoy, because it's not like these are two young guys where it's like, all right, we know the future of the team is in their hands, but they're 23, so let's see how they grow. No, like, these guys are in their prime. They've both been here a decade plus, or just under a decade in McAvoy's case, but you know exactly what you have in them. Like, the idea that, you know, we didn't get to see McAvoy have an optimal opportunity to lead. It's like, yeah, but he's been wearing an A for how many years now? Like, I just think, like, you know what Charlie McAvoy is as a leader. So again, I do think they're going to name a C, but if they don't, then yeah, it is, to me, it would be pretty concerning and pretty telling of what they think of both of them, really, if they're still not convinced that either one is captain material.
So this goes to my theory. I slightly, ever so slightly disagree, or just want to alter what you said, Scott. I think it's, if they don't enter the season with a captain, I think it speaks far more to what they think David Pastrnak shouldn't be or isn't than McAvoy, at least in their mind, because I feel like, and I felt this way as a fan back in the day too, I always believed that Charlie McAvoy, when he entered the league, was the profile of the next generation captain for the Boston Bruins. That rugged, in your face, two-way defenseman, English speaking, like, in the community, like, all of those boxes. He just profiled to me as the next captain beyond the Chara, Bergeron, Marchand era. And even though Pastrnak was around back then, it was just easier or convenient to chalk David up as the really high profile scoring winger who's just the assistant captain, because he doesn't need the C to do his job. And it might just be easier for him to just go about his business without the C. And I think the Bruins felt that way from the jump as well. And I think there's a part of them deep down that might still feel that way or prefer that. The problem is, to that notion, is that David has stepped up as a better leader than Charlie in the last couple of years. And I think Cam Neely and Don Sweeney understand that. And so if they go into the season this year without a captain, to me, it's them saying, it's hard to name Charlie the captain right now when he just started the season off with a 6-game suspension from tomahawking Zach Benson. He does have some immaturity still in his game, at least between the ears sometimes. And David has done everything that he could possibly do in the last couple of years to step up as a leader, especially since the trading of Brad Marchand. So I think Pastrnak has done everything he possibly could have done to this point to earn that C. So if he doesn't get that C this offseason, it tells me that he's not their guy, and that they're trying to give McAvoy as much runway as possible to justify it, not to the Bruins management, but from a PR perspective of, this is why it's Charlie's time. Even if they choose David this offseason, I still feel like Charlie was always their first preference from a profile perspective, and they had to kind of audible at some point. But if they do choose a captain, all of this goes moot. But that's been my gut feeling for years. And I think that David's forced their hand so much in the last couple of years. Not that Charlie hasn't done a good job, but it's just been that much better by David. When Brad got traded, Charlie was out of the lineup. He was hurt. And Pastrnak had to be that guy in the locker room during the toughest times in the organization for about a decade. And Charlie has dealt with stuff on and off the ice, a lot of injuries, and David has just been putting this team on his back for how long? And he has stepped up. He has matured. And so I'm not saying David's not worthy, but if they go into the year without a captain, I don't see them ever choosing David as that guy. I don't know what else he could do to this point, but I think Charlie could PR wise justify a Bruins choice at some point, and maybe they're just buying time. You know,
it doesn't mean he'll never be, because he's a little bit younger. Maybe he's there for 2-3 years after Pastrnak. Even if both of them do just finish out their seasons with one team in Boston, it doesn't mean he can never be the captain. But I also think when you talk about Pastrnak kind of changing how they have to think about it, and you watch where the guys, like the younger guys in particular, gravitate and who they are put next to when they come in. They purposefully put the younger guys when they come to Boston next to Pastrnak. They put Minton there with him at the end of last year. They've had Hagen's locker near him. They have the younger guys kind of going through Pastrnak as a liaison to getting acclimated to the rest of the team. And I do feel like I watch them naturally gravitate there because he's very open and inviting. He's friendly. He's social. He makes people feel comfortable.
He's approachable.
He's approachable and he's fun, and he's not gonna, he's gonna hold you accountable, but he's not mean, and he's not intimidating in a good way. But so you can go talk to him, and I think the younger guys feel that. And I don't know, it just feels like at some point you watch how the interactions are, and that they obviously know that better than we do. They see where the guys gravitate. They see who's helping the guys who need help, who are they going to for advice. And it could be different guys at different times, but I'm sure it's kind of clear to them which guy that is. And it does seem like, from what we've seen, Pastrnak is the guy that the younger guys, at least, are all kind of bouncing ideas off of and getting to talk to and look up to him in a way that kind of lends itself to wanting to listen to everything he says. So I just, that's obviously a huge factor. So whatever they do see in terms of that, the way that the guys in the room kind of look at each of those options, they have to take that into high account.
Yeah, they do. And not to disagree with that, but I will just note that the guys you named are young forwards, and forwards tend to gravitate towards forwards, defenseman to defenseman. Not that like there has to be a divide there, but that is just kind of naturally how things break oftentimes. But Brian, I do agree with everything you said. Like I to me, it's not just a good theory. I think there's legitimately something to that yeah, they probably for many years viewed McAvoy as future C, and in the last couple have had to give more consideration to Pastrnak that maybe they weren't giving 7 years ago when he was younger, and you're trying to project what these guys are going to be. Like we could even bring it down to this next wave of youth where, like, because McAvoy always came with that, right? Like, even when he was younger, people talked about him as like future captain material. He wore a letter at World Juniors on a USA team that won gold. Like, he always kind of had that reputation. Now you could look at him and be like, well, Fraser Minton is a guy who has a reputation, has had it coming up. He's been a captain at World Juniors. Everyone says like, oh, future captain material. And it's like, what if like 8 years from now we're having a conversation where it's like, you know what? Maybe James Higgins is actually the C. Like, he
Yeah.
didn't quite have that reputation as much, but geez, he's really been doing an awesome job. And like, maybe we have to rethink this. That happens, right? Like, players grow and evolve, and they grow and evolve as people. So, yeah, it is interesting. Ultimately, I think we're all in the same spot, which is we think it should be Pastrnak. Not that I think McAvoy would be necessarily a bad choice. Like, I wouldn't go that far. But to me, Pastrnak has edged ahead. One last thing I will note here, just fun little trivia. Do you know what happened the last time the Bruins went multiple seasons in a row without a C?
I feel like I saw this recently, so I think I'm going to let Bridget maybe guess.
Bridget, any guesses?
No, because it's either going to be really good or really bad.
Yeah, they won 2 Stanley Cups. It was the early 70s. They actually went 6 years in a row without a C from 1967 to 73. Now, a little bit of a weird one because you talk to anyone who like knew the team in that time, everyone knew and understood that Johnny Busick was the de facto captain, but for whatever reason, he just didn't have the C on his jersey.
Yeah, that is
you
interesting.
said that was they won the year that they named a captain.
Huh?
They won the year that they named a captain.
No, that they won 2 cups without one. 70 and 72, they didn't have a captain.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, like, do the Bruins need a captain? No. Does any team need a captain? Like, I see that sometimes people will say they don't need one. It's like, okay, fine. You can say the same about any team. Like, what NHL team really needs a captain? Like, and the way I look at it is, this past season was that full year sample to give both of those guys the opportunity to showcase what they could do. The year they sold off the deadline when Marchand was traded, McAvoy was out, and David did a great job stepping up in that way. But you wanted to give McAvoy a full opportunity. Have they not seen over the last year? Has Marco Sturm not seen over the last year? I know he has. Like, when they sit down with Sturm, I am 1,000% confident that Marco Sturm knows who the captain should be. If management deviates from Sturm's suggestion or intel, there's something off there. All I'll say is, to me, if they go the route of no captain and say, hey, we had a good thing last year, leadership by committee, and we're a leadership by committee team, that's like pissing on my leg and telling me it's raining. Like, that to me is a cop out of you not thinking that you have a true leader. Like, if you're saying we're doing leadership by committee, that's a cop out to me. That means you don't think you have the guy, or you don't want it to be David and you want to buy time for McAvoy. But I'll just say, could you guys imagine if the roles were reversed and McAvoy has been this rock for the Bruins the last couple of years on and off the ice. David's been really good, but he's been in and out of the lineup with injuries and stuff like that. And then the last memory we have of Pastrnak is just tomahawking somebody on the Sabres going into the offseason. You let him for 6 games next year. And like, imagine if the roles were reversed. I feel like Pastrnak would be getting ripped by everybody, media, fans, everybody. This kid can never be captain. But yet when it happens with McAvoy, it's like, he's a defenseman and, his wires crossed. And I'm not saying that they didn't, and that I'm not saying McAvoy is not worthy of being a captain. Especially because I don't know what I don't know in that room. If Marco Sturm is talking to Sweeney and Neely and saying Charlie is the guy, to Scott's point earlier, Charlie's the guy that everybody gravitates towards, Charlie's the engine that makes this car go, then okay. But, you guys are in the locker room. I think you guys have an idea of who that player is. Not that you're there when it really matters. Like, you're kind of there in the media scrums, but you can still see dynamics. Like, you can still see those a little bit. In any event, we've probably spent enough time on this one, but
I got one last thing, and I'm sorry, I'll try to make it quick.
No, take your time.
And we, to your point, like, we don't see what they're like in the intermissions when, like, it's heated.
Right.
But there was a clip at the end during the playoffs on Behind the Bee that they showed. And did they show it on purpose to show that Pastrnak is a leader when they no-showed in Game 4? And just a terrible start. One of the worst hockey games we've ever seen. And they show the clip of Pastrnak and the team walking into the locker room, and he is just absolutely screaming. Like, he is trying to hold people accountable. If you haven't seen the clip, go watch it and tell me that guy doesn't sound like a leader who is saying the right thing in that moment, because it almost feels like it means more when it comes from him when he is mad, because he's never like that, right? Like, there's an impact to what he's saying, and you can tell the guys are receptive to his emotion, because it's the right emotion. He's pissed off. He's trying to wake people up so that they don't go out and just absolutely no show the rest of the game. And if you go back and watch that, you can see the way that Pastrnak leads in a tough time, in an important time in the playoffs. And I don't think you can question that he has the ability to say the things that need to be said. He's not trying to be the nice guy in that situation, even though he's a nice guy in general. That's just his personality. But he knows how to try to push the buttons. I don't know. I came out of that thinking, all right, that's the captain. I know it's just one clip, and it's in an extreme moment, but it is the playoffs. And also, Behind the Bee is a production that is filmed by the Bruins and put out by the Bruins. They have final say on the cut. So, like, was it purposefully shown? Like, I don't know. It just felt like there was something in that moment that makes you realize, like, that was the guy who had the ear of the rest of the team.
The Bruins are very intentional. They're very methodical all the way through their PR team. To your point, Bridget, I definitely read into that a little bit. And to the point as well, podcasts, radio appearances, television appearances, like, that all has to get approved through the Bruins. Like, their players aren't going on things if there's not approval, right? And I'm not saying Charlie shouldn't have done this. It's your Olympic, teammates that you won a gold medal with. Grow the Game Players Podcast. But again, from a PR perspective, I just find it hard to see the lasting image of McAvoy last year, Tommy Hawking, Zach Benson, missing the first 6 games of the year, and then being on a podcast, laughing it up with Matthew and Brady Tkachuk, who I know they're good friends off the ice. I know that hockey doesn't extend into real life. Like, I get that. But from a PR perspective, you have to think of Bruins fans. And a lot of Bruins fans will be like, oh, Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk. Like, they're the enemy. They're the rivals. Like, and to see, I just don't see the Bruins PR allowing their captain to be in a couple of months, to be yucking it up with, like, division foes. I know hockey and reality are just, they're different things. I'm not saying in real life that they're not friends. I get all that, but this is entertainment and there is PR involved, and you do have to think about fans who bleed and die. This, what happens with these players and where they go, what they say. So perception sometimes is reality, and I did find that interesting. I was like, I don't know, like, this kind of strikes me as, yeah, Charlie, go ahead, because, like, there's no captaincy we have to worry about from a PR perspective. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I try to think of the business elements of things sometimes, and PR is a thing, obviously. So did you guys have that thought, or did you see that and say, oh, that's okay, they could still name him captain after being buddy with the Tkachuks on a podcast, talking about, inner happenings of the Bruins locker room and stuff?
It didn't bother me.
Didn't bother me.
Like, I know, like, we talked about it at the time, and I was like, yeah, I mean, these guys won Olympic gold together. It was probably the best moment of all of their lives. Like, yeah, I don't expect McAvoy to just, like, not talk to them or be friends with them or whatever. So but I know there were fans who react that way, and that's
right.
How fans react is probably more important than how I think of it. So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there was some of that. It didn't bother me at all personally. Yeah, we can move on to another question, but I just had one last thing on this.
This question is going to take us to episode 700.
Well, I think since this is our 600th episode and we're talking about it, I think this is a good time for us to name our captain. So congratulations to me. I'll be wearing the C starting Monday. Thank you everyone for your support.
Where do you get the nerve?
Unbelievable.
No, like no.
A true captain doesn't appoint themselves.
Exactly. No, a true captain is who the team.
Captain takes charge. I'm taking charge.
I mean,
okay.
I think
let's
give
go to the next question. Let's go.
There's too much off pod drama with you, Scott, to have you as our captain.
Yeah, we can't trust you to do an interview. He's gonna go. He's already been on the Kachucks podcast a few times, so.
All right, let's jump ahead to this question. Again, do you want to do this next one from Ben, or you want to go to somebody else? I know it's a topic you wanted to hit on, Scott, but
yeah, we can do the second part of Ben's. Hopefully,
okay.
be a little quicker with
okay.
part two. But
all right. Ben, as our fourth co-host today, says, I'm so sick of hearing Cam Neely talk about how the kids will have to fight for jobs. Every year, it's the same thing. And then they keep vets who certainly haven't earned it over younger players due to their contracts. You need to play your younger talent to see what you've got. Enough already.
So, again, there was a lot of this reaction to the Cam Neely appearance because the exact quote, he was asked. So Rich Shirtleaf asked all the GMs, like, what are you looking forward to with your team? And Cam Neely's answer was, I'm excited about the competition in camp this year, to be honest with you. See some of the younger kids push for jobs. Hagen's got a taste a little bit last year. I know he's been working really hard this offseason. Got a new player in Pastrnak. I'm excited to see what he brings to us. But just the competition in camp, these younger kids should be licking their chops and saying, I want that spot right there. So could the Bruins give their younger players more opportunities? Yes, for sure. And we've covered that extensively. But I'm always kind of baffled when I see how many people have the reaction that they never give any kids a chance in camp. Do you remember going into camp last year when everyone had penciled in lineups, depth charts, look at first practice, how they line up? Fraser Minten and Marat Husnudinov were not in most of those projections. Most people had them, maybe we were hopeful Minten would make it. Maybe thought Husnudinov was an extra forward. Even in practices, even after they kind of pared down the groups, I remember the first practice they had in camp where there was like a clear split of Group A was like NHL guys, Group B was like, you guys are probably going to Providence. Minten and Husnudinov were together on the fifth line. So like maybe they still had a chance at making the team, but they weren't in the lineup. Both guys ended up being regulars in the lineup. Both younger players, both fairly unproven going into last season. And they won jobs because they had good camps, they played well, and they won over Sturm. That was just last year that happened. I could go back to Potter winning a job, his first year coming into camp. Again, someone who was not on anyone's radar as having a chance to win a job. And I know, different head coach going back that far, but Johnny Beecher won a job out of camp at one point. Jacob Lauko came out of nowhere to win a job out of camp. Like, I feel like I don't know if people want like 5 kids to win jobs, which I would say is going to be very rare unless you're in a true rebuilding phase. But like there have been younger players who have risen from maybe 5th, 6th line at the start of camp to win jobs. So I do bristle a bit at like this widespread reaction that no kid ever gets a chance to win a job in Bruins training camp, because I just don't really think it's accurate.
So what I would ask is, because I agree with you, Scott, but it kind of feels like right now there's more well-respected veterans that you would have to kind of hop over to do so. Like last year when Minten and Husnudinov made the, like who did they, which veteran that was well-respected and expected to be on the roster did they really beat out? They kind of beat out Mate Blumel and, like Johnny Beecher, like was there a Sean Corrali type well-respected veteran that Johnny Beecher beat out in that year? The year Matt Poitras made the team in the Centennial season, like they were kind of there wasn't, it was kind of up for grabs. Like, so I think you're right when you say that they have given younger players opportunities to break in, but I would say I'm struggling to think of, and they might exist. I'm struggling to think of examples where those younger players made the roster over somebody as respected as a Sean Corrali for that similar type of role. But my memory might just suck. And I think that might be what Bruins fans' fears are right now, where they're like, let's take Matt Poitras, for example, who's currently without a contract right now. We've talked about this. The natural spot in the lineup for him to kind of break in feels like maybe fourth line center because of, all what we know about this roster. And so if Matt Poitras is signed and has a good camp and whatnot, a short camp, albeit, would the Bruins be willing to start him instead of Sean Corrali at fourth line center and would have Sean as like your 13th forward, or be willing to waive an Alex Steves to make room for, like, I think those are the questions that people have, and they're skeptical. I think if there wasn't a Sean Corrali, if there wasn't a Mikey Asimont, if there wasn't Alex, whatever, then maybe people would be like, okay, well, there's vacancies for grabs. But that might be the distinction here.
Yeah, it's like the feeling of those guys being boxed out by sheer number of people that could take that job and that were with the team last year. In particular with Poitras, I think so the three young kids that are the ones that it's like, oh, will they, won't they? I think Hagens, obviously we think will make it, but there's still a chance that somebody beats him out, I guess. So it's Hagens, Poitras, Brunet. And Brunet has to beat out like four guys, which I'm not saying is impossible, but he's going to beat out Harris, Yoki Haru, Lorai maybe, Aspero maybe. Like there's quite a group of guys that could be on that last deep pair, or the extra defenseman as well, I guess. But he's got a lot of guys, but maybe his style is different enough and his camp is good enough that it doesn't matter that Yoki Haru was ahead of him. Now he passed them or something like that. For Poitras, it is going to be tough just because it seems like that I just don't know if they're ready to move Corrali to an extra forward position. And then what do they do with Asimont and Steves and Reichel, I guess, and if you want to throw him in there, because there's going to be that extra forward roster spot those guys are going for. And then Hagens, we think like should have a real chance of taking the spot he had at the end of last season, right? Like, because he was the guy that was already in there. And I'm not saying it's like his spot to lose, but we already see kind of where the vision is for him to be on the wing. And some of the line mates that he had last year, they could just go right back to that if they wanted to. So I think of the young players trying to make a push, I think Poitras still has the most difficult job to do because of what you're saying, Brian, with veterans, with Corrali. I mean, Corrali did his job last year. That fourth line did what it was supposed to do. So, and it wasn't like we watched him like really drop off or, his age get in the way of him doing it, because he knows his job. He does it. It would be a different look of a fourth line with Poitras on it. Now, would it still have grittiness? Of course, because Jeannot and Kastelik are the guys who bring that really more to that line than Corrali does, but it's just it's just obviously a different dynamic with a young center with more speed and skill, different identity of a line potentially. But of them, I do think, unfortunately for the Poitras fans out there, he's going to have a harder time. It's going to be an important camp for him once he does get a contract, which he does not have right now. So if that gets done between now and mid-September, and he's in camp and he's gets 2-3 maybe 4 games. Normally, guys don't get all of them. Yeah, it's going to be important camp for him for sure.
Well, the fourth line with Corrali centering finished pretty strong because I do think they were good in that playoff series against Buffalo. But it's also worth noting, after the Olympics, they went over a month without scoring a goal. So I could easily see the Bruins looking at that and being like, we want a little more offense out of our fourth line, and that's where Pastrnak could come into play. I think there is opportunity for those 3 guys, especially that you highlighted, Bridget, Higgins, Patra, Brunet, because again, we're all penciling Higgins in. Like, we think, given the choice, I think we all think he probably makes it and is in the opening night lineup. Now, we'll see. Obviously he can go to Providence without waivers. That is a possibility that I wouldn't completely rule out. But I think most kind of penciled in lineups to start camp are going to have Higgins in it. And then Patra and Brunet, again, you're right. Patra has to sign first, so they still have to figure that out. But I don't think the Bruins want to waive those guys. Like, I think they want those guys to make the team, and whether they're in the opening night lineup or they start as extra forward, extra defenseman, respectively, I think they want them in Boston, and they want to keep them around. Now, where maybe the frustration can come in is I do think they're going to have to earn it. Like, I don't think the Bruins are going to hand them that spot if those guys don't have, if Patrick gets outplayed by Steves and Reichel, then it's entirely possible that those guys make the team over him and the Bruins don't just kind of reserve a spot for him. If Brunet gets outplayed by Lohrei and Jordan Harris, they might just keep Lohrei and Jordan Harris. So that I think there's certainly fans that are who feel like those guys should have spots no matter what. And even if they don't have the best camp, put them on the team and let them work through it in the NHL, which I think there's an argument for that. I can see that side of it. I think what the Bruins often default to is you have to win a job. They might want Patra and Brunet to make the team, but you're going to have to be one of the 13 or 14 best forwards. You're going to have to be one of the 7 or 8 best defensemen in camp. And to points that both Neely and Sturm made, there's not as much time to show that this year.
Well, and I agree with that, and I think that that's fair. I think the part that can be a bit annoying is when you have a situation where, because it's such a short camp, one of these younger players doesn't light the world on fire and completely grab the job, and you could say they didn't earn it. But then you have some of these fringe players who, to their credit, do have more NHL experience, but they don't have a good camp either to have earned it. But they make it because of their past experience, which to me is kind of I get it. I do. But that's where it's kind of a bit disingenuous. Did you really have the better camp, or do you have 50 NHL games to your name in Alex Steves' case? So we're going to waive Matt Patra because he didn't earn it. Or we're going to waive, but we're going to keep Steves, even though they both had subpar camps. That to me is, I feel like everybody needs to earn it. And obviously there's certain players, many players that are very, very well established and they are key parts of your team. I'm talking more the fringe depth players. When you have an experience, let's be honest, experience buys you more leash. And I think that's the part that sometimes annoys fans, not with every situation, but with some situations. Of course, if Sean Corrali has a slow camp, he's got a decade in the NHL to back up who he is. And so you could understand, okay, it's a slow camp for him. But when you have maybe I don't know, I think that's sometimes where people get annoyed is the younger players, because of their lack of experience, they have a shorter leash. And fair or unfair, that's where sometimes the fan frustration kind of comes into play, when you have a younger player who maybe didn't completely grab the opportunity, and then an older player who didn't do his best to keep it either. And they choose the older player instead of the younger player, which, yeah, I get it. I do, but that's where people get annoyed sometimes.
Yeah, like if both guys have a goal and 2 assists in camp, like they both have a similar camp where they were not lighting it on fire, maybe not terrible, just kind of meh, like, medium, middle of the line. Then who do you choose if neither guy forces your hand, right? Like
Right.
that. Then
to which I'd say, like, that it comes back to what forever was the age-old adage for any young player, which is you have to take someone's job. Brad Marchand has always talked about that. Like, he said he would literally circle guys on the depth chart and be like, I'm going to take his job. And I think that's changing. Like, I think there's like generational change where younger players maybe don't have that mindset as much, and not trying to go like boomer here, but like I do think younger players today like kind of tend to expect more to be given to them rather than them taking it. But like hockey, the NHL is kind of a place where like there is still something to that. And the Bruins certainly are an organization that doesn't hand stuff to younger players. Like clearly they're one of the teams that still leans into like, you got to take it. Like you got to win it. So if a young player and a veteran have similar camps and they're both kind of up and down, I mean, look, like I'd be fine kicking Mikey Eyssimont out the door to make room for Patra there. Like that's cool with me. I think I've seen what Eyssimont can be. I'd like to see what Patra can be. But also, like, if that happens, Matt Patra has made it easy for the Bruins to say, well, you didn't win a job.
That's fair. And listen, I think I speak for Bridget as well. Nobody on this panel is suggesting to hand things to kids. The entitlement of the youth these days, we don't want to. I think what I'm saying, though, is this training camps are so small now. And you bring up Brad Marchand getting his comeuppance, Scott. Patrice Bergeron was on Spit and Chicklets a couple of weeks back, and he was talking about his first ever training camp. And he said, it was a 9-game training camp back then. And he talked about how after the first couple of games, his agent was like, hey, they kind of like you. They might keep you around for another couple of games here in training camp. And I just feel like back then, training camp was such a true battle for jobs. You got 9 training preseason games if you're a young kid, and then the vets probably a couple of less, but like a 3-4 week training camp, 9-10 games. That's a true battle. May the best man win. Now we're talking about a couple of half ice sessions at Warrior, a couple of jag-off games against the Flyers and Rangers over the course of a week, and here we go, puck drop September 29th. Like that's the problem, is that I don't think it's not enough time. And I just think that the Bruins, if they take the job and run with it in that short amount of time, amazing. But Bruins management and the coaching staff, they just need to understand, and I think they do, that's a damn short sample size. Like, so it's the nature of the beast nowadays. It is what it is. They're not going back to 9-10 preseason games. That's the change in dynamics now. It's hard to win a job in a 3-game sample size. It just is.
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing. It's like you have to have a little bit of extra faith maybe in your projection of a younger player. Like
Right.
you have to lean on your guys from Providence who saw them last season and their confidence in whether or not this player has the ability to land and grow and solidify a spot as the year goes on. And I go back to the comment when I asked Trent Whitfield in his introductory press conference as Providence Bruins head coach what he thought about Patra's NHL readiness. And he said, he is ready. He just needs the runway, right? Like both of those guys, Brunet and him, the sentiment was they are ready. They just need that chance. And it does 3 preseason games because they might not play 4, they might not play all of them. Maybe they do. Maybe this is a year where they're like, yeah, we're giving all these guys a chance for 4 games, whatever. But is that runway? Like, is 3 to 4 preseason games runway? Or is that you give them a chance into the regular season and that's the real runway? Like,
it's a helicopter runway.
Yeah, right.
Just straight up.
No, so I don't even think they call that a runway. I think they just call that a helipad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But anyway, like, if you were gonna decide, like, you may have to already have it in your mind that you decide if it's between these two and their camp is not, they're both similar. Like, we do want to give this younger player runway rather than say you didn't win it, especially in this situation where they both aren't. There's no like easy, oh, this guy, if we can just send him now without waivers. Like, no, like it's equal in that way. If you're talking about a Steves or an Asamont versus a Patra.
All right, let's go to a couple of quick ones here before we get out of here. This one's fun. Let's go to this question from Tom. Says, do you guys have any hockey-related pet peeves? Not big structural problems like the bad playoff format or the draft lottery, but small annoyances. I definitely have one. I'm curious to hear you guys first, though. Maybe we have the same one.
Having to sit next to Bridget every home game.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Big pet peeve.
Yep. When the popcorn
Scott's not going to make it to 601.
No. Well, I thought that was going to say when the popcorn machine, the popcorn is only a C- rather than an A+. Occasionally we get some popcorn that does, it's not an A, right? That's his pet peeve for sure. Oh, the line for the coffee machine. The coffee machine is a little slow, and sometimes we got like a 10-person deep line, and I'm just trying to get hot water for my tea. But that is not hockey related.
No, I do have an actual hockey one. So
okay, go ahead.
This is one that has bothered me, and I've definitely mentioned it on here before, but probably not in a while. This has always bothered me, and when I bring it up to people, they're like, "Oh, that makes sense." But I feel like no one else cares about it, and nothing will ever be done about it. But when a team takes a penalty at the end of a period, so the team starts the next period on a power play, that faceoff should be in the offensive zone, just like the start of every other power play. You're essentially getting penalized by starting in the neutral zone just because of the timing of when the penalty happened. I've never understood why that doesn't change. And it really bothers me. And just like, I seem to be the only person in the world who cares about this, because every time I bring it up to people, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. All right, cool. Anyways. And like, no one cares. It's a
great point, Scott. Chalk it up as another reason why abbreviated power plays are the absolute worst. There's nothing, this is not my answer, but this is one of my pet peeves is like when the team you're rooting for or you have a vesting interest in, they're getting hosed all game, no power plays at all. And then like they finally get their first power play with like 30 seconds left in the second period. And so, you're going to win the offensive zone draw to even get a chance to score right away. If you don't, it's ice and the period's done. And then you got to go to the break and the other team has a chance to rest up and game plan a little bit more. And then to Scott's point, you got the opening draw at center ice and you got the fresh sheet of ice, which in theory, should help, but sometimes the ice is a little bit sticky. I hate abbreviated power plays, especially when it's the only one that your team gets over the course of a game. That's a good one, Scott. Mine is, it's always a pet peeve of mine that officials are not made available to the media after a very controversial call. I think that in general, there's a lack of accountability for officiating across all sports. I'm not saying to make them available all the time, and I know that the league would never subject their refs to having to answer to these calls because it makes the league look bad, especially when it's a bad, blatant call. But as fans, as media, as teams, officials, for better or worse, they do affect the outcome, and they are human, and sometimes they do make mistakes. And I just feel like, they get to go maybe impact the outcome of a playoff series or something major over the course of the season. And, all they got to do is go back into the restroom, untie their skates, and say, boys really messed that one up, huh? But at least we don't got to answer to anybody. Now, they do have to answer to the official. The officials have their own, how would you term it, Scott? Like officials they're monitored and judged by some official.
Yeah, like a supervisor or whatever.
Exactly. And that does come into play because well-rated officials over the course of the regular season, not every ref in the regular season gets to ref in the postseason, and the later the rounds go, they trim down to the best of the best. But like you think back on the Noel Achari trip back in 2019, and everybody with ears and eyes knew that was the most blatant trip of all time, and it leads to a goal. Now, the Bruins deserve blame for not winning that game in a landslide after that Zdeno Chara introduction. And there's no excuse for losing Game 7, but that was a huge play and no accountability. All that happened was I'm pretty sure the league maybe emailed the Bruins saying, hashtag sorry, not sorry. So that's my pet peeve, more accountability across sports with officials when it warrants.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. Mine. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is maybe a little bit like on the more structural side of it, because I think it's like a league decision that has to be made to enforce major penalties more often. I know I've mentioned this to you guys before. Working in college hockey, they are much more likely to give a 5-minute major penalty than what you see in the NHL. And I mean it mostly just talking about player safety and trying to get those bad hits out of the game. If it's near the, if you're questioning, is that 5 minutes, and you see the contact, and we know a lot of times we watch hits in the NHL and we're like, I have no idea how that was just 2 minutes, right? That doesn't happen as much in college hockey. So I think with my other job, watching the way it's officiated there, with the hope being that they get those hits out of the game before the guys even make it to the pros, player safety could be handled better if there were more examples set of what not to do, what won't be accepted. So I think they should have more of a league-wide understanding of like, yeah, we got to ramp up the hit to the heads call, like being more strict on it. If you do that for a few years, hopefully the result is, first of all, less injuries and guys being less likely to try it because there's more of a repercussion, more of a consequence. So that is one, but that's more of a bigger structural one, I think. And then the other one is, have you guys noticed, like, or I'm sure, I mean, I'm talking to like our listeners, anybody whatever team you root for, when you see a penalty where it should be both guys that go and they just get the one that like retaliated or whatever, it's like they should be taking both guys more often, I think, than they do. So and then this is my really small one, and this is a broadcaster pet peeve of mine that is just hockey adjacent, which is, and this has only happened to me twice, but is when I'm interviewing someone in an intermission and I say, like, what adjustments do you need to make or something to that effect? And they say, score more goals than the other team. I want to lose my mind. Because
I mean, that's a good adjustment, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Like, there's literally no value in that answer, and it's always condescending. It's assuming I'm stupid, the listeners are stupid. Like, it is, honestly, if you're doing it, it tells me something about you, that you are trying to be a pain in the ass really normally. So it's only happened to me twice. Both college guys. Hopefully they matured after that. Maybe they didn't, but yeah, that's my broadcaster pet peeve, is like, if I'm asking you a question, like, just give me some, honestly, I'd rather have you say, we need to get pucks deep more, like, than that. Like, that's the one answer that just lets me know that you are trying to be a jerk. So that's my last one.
Yeah, the major penalties or player safety in general, like, I think this Department of Player Safety for a while has not been nearly good enough. And in fact, in my opinion, has regressed when it comes to protecting players. Like, I've pointed this out a bunch, but like hitting from behind is essentially just a 2-minute minor now, unless there's a serious injury. Like, never gets reviewed, never gets fined, suspended. And there are hits I see every year where I'm like, that should be suspension worthy. And it just gets a 2-minute minor, maybe even nothing at all, and everyone moves on. I do think there's like, for me, there should be would hopefully be a happy medium between NHL not being serious enough. And in my opinion, college has gone too far the other way, especially with how many challenges there are by coaches for major penalties that clearly aren't majors, and reviews that take like 5-10 minutes and just ruin the flow of the game. Like, I think college has gone too far the other way, where it's kind of a mess and gets in the way too much. But there should be something in between those two.
I also don't like when offsides is called so tight and then like the puck leaves the zone and hold on, actually, yeah. So if you go offsides by a fraction, and then the puck leaves the zone, and then you go back in and score, could the team challenge for the previous offsides entry, or does it negate once you leave, right?
Yeah,
Right.
my offside issue is that sometimes it happens so far ahead that it really does not affect the play at all.
Right.
And I got in trouble. Well, somebody was mad at me for saying that I think that if the team has a chance to clear it and then they turn it over, like if they have like clear possession and they just can't get the puck out, like that should be the end of what you're looking at. Like
I'm with you on that.
And then somebody was mad from a team that I said that, but that's kind of their fault because they were just mean. But I think, right, defenseman can't get it out. Like, that's his own fault. So anyway, I don't think they're going to change that rule because there's a little bit too much probably gray area of the way to call it.
Yeah.
But
if it was an egregious offsides, fine. But like I'm talking like where like they have to go to the frame by frame offsides, and then to your point, Bridget, like there's multiple possession changes. What do you guys think about the delay of game rule, like shooting the puck over the glass? You want that in the game, or you want that out of the game?
For a long time, I never had a problem with that penalty. Because my approach was basically like, well, don't shoot the puck over the glass.
Right.
And I do think I'm evolving on it. Like, and maybe this is just separation from like why the rule was created in the first place, but it's like, I don't know, or maybe I just want a little bit more like of a judgment call, for refs to determine if it's intentional or not. But I do get that can create a gray area. It's so, we've had it for so long that like I think we forget that there was a time where some guys would just intentionally flip the puck out of play to get a whistle and get catch a breath. Because we never see guys do it intentionally now, it's like, oh, no one's ever trying to do it. Like, that's harsh. So I kind of see both sides. I'm evolving. For a long time, I was like, you know what? It should be a penalty, and anyone who complains, just don't shoot the puck over the glass. Keep it under the glass. How's that? But now I do find myself like kind of shifting a bit where I'm like, I don't know if we need it. I don't know if we need this anymore or need it to be as strict as it is.
Yeah.
But it would become difficult to like, because it's not an objective. It would be kind of like if you change the rule to like intentional, like you have to then decide if somebody was trying to, like, you can't get into, sometimes it's just a judgment call, right? Like that's a subjective observation of if something was intentional. So
I do feel like players, I do think that it's one thing to want to alleviate defensive pressure in your own zone, but they know that these pucks are very dangerous to go into the stands. Like I do think players like naturally like wouldn't want to just like fire a puck into the stands. Maybe at least in today's NHL, maybe back in the 80s, they didn't give a shit, but you can really, I mean, you can kill somebody if it's like a hard shot, nobody's looking, and it hits them in the head. So like, I think players naturally just like, I don't think it's ever going to be their intention going forward, just like fire pucks into the Loge, unless it's an accident, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like you can flip it out intentionally too, right? And then it's not doing damage. But
Still
I mean,
could, but yeah.
If it's just treated like icing, I think I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Scott. Yeah, if it goes out of the exactly. All right, let's go to this this one here from Nate. Maybe we get to one more after this, maybe not. But Nate says he has a couple hot takes. We'll just go to the first one he has. Says this fan base is way off on Don Sweeney, and he's one of the top GMs in the league. If he was fired, he would be hired tomorrow. Also thinking Kevin Adams was brought in as a replacement is off base. The Jacobs clearly are signaling full support. Cam Neely confirms full support. Not sure why this fan base thinks he's doing a poor job. He nailed the down year sell-off and reloaded the prospect pool in a year. And he has set up multiple rosters that just didn't finish the job. Not sure what else he could have done to do a better job. 2015 aside, new GM, so giving him some slack. Other than staying away from free agency, he's nailed every trade on top of it. I'm just going to say a couple of things here before you guys go. The first one, I'll go in order from the back part of the question, the 2015 part. Him being a new GM, like I'm not going to give him as much slack as maybe Nate is here because he was an assistant GM for the Bruins for how long? It's not like he was new to the organization. You know, as an assistant GM, he's very well in tune with the Bruins scouting department, like all that stuff. So I'm not going to give him a full rope of slack there. Maybe a little bit, but not a ton. As far as the deadline sell-off, like I agree, he did a really good job there. And for the most part, I do think he's given the Bruins a lot of, rosters and some capable of going further than they did. The Kevin Adams thing, I think that the Bruins hired Kevin Adams to help Don Sweeney and Cam Neely to the best of his abilities. But I also think that, like many business moves that happen in the world, I think if things go wrong, I don't think it's a bad idea in the Jacobs mind or Neely's mind even to have somebody who's capable of stepping in if they need to, if something goes wrong with Don. I think both can be true. I think he's there to help the Bruins. And I also think that it's not the craziest idea that he's an insurance policy. I mean, yeah, I'll leave it there for now. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm with you on Kevin Adams. I think that sums it up well. Like they didn't bring him in to be Don Sweeney's replacement, but I think you'd have to be pretty naive to think that like that's not at least somewhere in their mind of, hey, if things go poorly and we like what Kevin Adams is doing and what he's saying, like he's an option. So I'm with you on that. On Sweeney's track record and just 10 years a whole, I do think he's been better than a lot of fans and media would like to give him credit for. Nate's right. Like he did build a team in 2019 that had home ice in Game 7 in the Stanley Cup final, and the players didn't get it done. He absolutely built a team in 2023 that was capable of winning a Stanley Cup. They had injuries. They made mistakes. The coach made mistakes. Like, yeah, I don't really put that on Sweeney. If there's anything that I question from that, was the last dance with Bergeron and Krejci, like, was Jim Montgomery, who, you were taking a little bit of a risk there, right? Like, he wasn't as experienced as someone else, other candidates you could have brought in. Like, was that the right hire? But to be totally fair, none of us, including myself, were questioning that during the season when they break the points record. In the playoffs, those questions surfaced. I just think it's fair to say, like, there are things that Don Sweeney does well and things he doesn't. I think he's been good on trades by and large, whether that's buying, whether it's my, 1-for-1 type of trade, thinking of like Hala Fazaka, whether it's selling, because I agree with Nate, he got good returns in 25 with the deadline sell-off. I think he's been good there. I think he's been good for the most part at re-signing his own guys, knowing who's worth committing to long-term, big money, and who's not. But it's also fair to say that he has had some bad free agent signings, including Elias Lindholm or going back to David Backes, that do hamstring you. Yeah, Bolesky, that prevent you from doing other things. And obviously the big one is it is very fair to say he hasn't been very good at drafting. With all the caveats that I and others will always throw out there about trading away first round picks, not having as many cracks at it. Even when they do pick in the first round, they've rarely been top 10 or top 15 even. All understood and all fair, but you do have to have more hits than they've had under Sweeney's watch.
Yeah, I think too where this question comes from is probably you're out in your day-to-day life and then a conversation starts and some people are entrenched and have been for a long time. Like one thing made them believe, oh, this is irredeemable, right? Like and maybe the opinion just doesn't change as other things happen, as you start to see the benefits of the sell-off and who they got back. And, I think you guys both said it well. I don't have all that much to add, but there's certainly a certain subset of fans who I don't think are ever going to give them a real chance. I mean, unless they win a Stanley Cup, and still they'll probably be like, well, the players, it's on the, like it's giving credit to other spaces. And when we've talked about, I mean, there's been different episodes. We haven't had one of these in a while, but like when you ask the question, like, okay, who had the biggest piece of the pie in why this was successful or unsuccessful? There's always going to be a lot of scrutiny on his part of, the share when you're comparing it like players, coaches, management. So yeah, like he has huge responsibility and they're all GMs are always going to be under the microscope. How about Craig Breslow, who was saying nice things about him in April and May, and then now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess he was right. And then now the Red Sox they've been up and down, and it's like, well, maybe he shouldn't have traded off some of the assets for the guys that they brought in if they're not going to contribute. So it goes back and forth even on the course of like 1 month to another. But yeah, I think if you're having like an actual fair conversation, there's a lot of stuff that he has done that he deserves credit for, but that some people probably just don't bring up in conversation when they're talking about their qualms with the bad, rather than looking at it on both sides, the good and the bad.
Yeah, I think you guys hit it. I think the truth, like much of life, falls somewhere in the middle. I think something that Nate said that I do believe is true is if Don Sweeney were fired tomorrow, I think he'd be hired pretty soon. I don't know if it would be the next day because, other teams would have to fire and, hire, but I think he would find a job pretty soon. I think that over the course of his tenure, it's fair to look at how the Bruins have done in the regular season in particular. They've been a top 3, if not top 2 team in the NHL in terms of points generated in the regular season under his leadership. It's also fair to look at, how many one and dones or, second round and done seasons they've had. Outside of 2019, they haven't advanced past the second round with him, and they've missed the playoffs a couple of times. I also want to say that how much of the Bruins' regular season success under his tenure was on the backs of players that he inherited. He did not bring in Zdeno Chara, Tuukka Rask, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, David Krejci. He didn't even draft David Pastrnak. That was a Peter Chiarelli draft pick. So he kind of came into a pretty good situation. That Bruins team in 15-16, they weren't a contender, but they had a lot of pieces in place. You add to that some of the questionable draft picks and free agency acquisitions that Scott mentioned. there's a lot to question there. He has not done a bad job. He has not done an amazing job. I think a lot of the success that the Bruins have had is because of pieces that they've had in place, whether he was a GM or not. And I do think he's done a good job to supplement that at times. But guys, in honor of episode 600, how many seasons have we gone into with this Bruins team since this podcast has started? And the sentiment has been, including this season, the Bruins are a couple of key pieces away. Like, we can go back to when we first did this podcast. I'm pretty sure it was around when they got Taylor Hall, right? Great trade acquisition. Some of the things that Sweeney's done well, but that was a situation that Taylor Hall said, I want to go this team and this team only. Nonetheless, that year they had no Zdeno Chara. He had just left that previous offseason. Their back end was a little bit in flex. They had no Torrey Krug, no Chara. So I'm pretty sure it was McAvoy, Grzelcyk, Carlo, Mike Riley, Lozon, and Clifton, maybe something along those lines. And then up front, they still have a lot of their pieces in place. You still have Bergeron, Krejci, Marchand, Pastrnak, DeBrusk, stuff like that. But then the following season, the big question was the Bruins who is the Bruins' second best defenseman? They need somebody else with McAvoy. And the big solve was to go out and bring in Derek Forbort. They also lost David Krejci to go play in the Czech Republic. So they had no second line center. Now, Eric Haula came in, did an admirable job, but we knew it wasn't enough to get the Bruins to the Cup. Good trade, Haula for Zacha. Good job there. Then the next season, again, Bergeron on Spit and Chicklets kind of said it. Bergeron's the one who orchestrated David Krejci coming back to Boston for that final season. He talked to Sweeney and was like, hey, have you talked to Krejci? Like, no, I haven't talked to him yet. So Bergeron pretty much got on the phone with Krejci and said, hey, I need you to come back for my final season, one final dance. I'll give credit to Bergeron there before Sweeney. But yes, Sweeney
but I was going to say, Sweeney also made a tough call that I think opened the possibility, because I don't think David Krejci was coming back if Bruce Cassidy was still the coach. Not that that's why.
Okay.
Sweeney fired Cassidy.
Do we know that for sure? Is that speculation? Because it sounds like a lot of the older players liked Bruce and the other kids didn't.
I don't know that for sure, but I'd bet on it.
And if that's the case, Scott, fair enough. And Don did, throughout the course of that season, he did go all in. He got Bergeron and Krejci on short deal, 1-year deals, very bonus heavy, which came back to hurt them a bit the next year. They were they were in cap debt pretty much. And then the Centennial season, no Bergeron, no Krejci, no internal options really to replace them. And then, the subsequent years, we kind of know where we are. And then they finally have to sell off the deadline a couple of years ago. And I agree with Nate's point. He did a really good job at that deadline. I've always said that. But my point is, it's always been a couple of key pieces that this team's just been missing. And it's almost like they kind of like by accident ended up being amazing that record-breaking year. All I'm saying is Don Sweeney being polarizing makes a lot of sense. It's easy to see why people say he's done a good job in certain ways and not in certain ways. So I think a lot of the fan base is hard on him, some more than others. It's right down the middle. There's reasons for everything.
Yeah. Well, they were stacked that 23 season though.
But if you think about that season, if going into that season, how many pundits, not here, this show, we actually were like, what are they talking about? Most people had the Bruins missing the playoffs that year. Oh, they're old, they're over the hill, like this, that, the other thing. Now they prove people wrong, but
I
in any event.
I think what you're saying too is like they should have developed their own defensemen and centers, right? But there was a need to hit on a defenseman that then developed into a solid second pair guy to add to Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy, and like their internal development of a new center that just wasn't there yet because maybe you missed on a guy in the draft or you traded something, but most likely that you didn't make the right pick or you traded away those picks or whatever, and you didn't have the internal solution necessarily that you developed into a solid middle six center or a second pair defenseman. And they're still like, now they have some guys in the pipeline that could be those guys, especially at center with Higgins and Letourneau and Minton and even Husnudinov potentially if they go with him at center. So it's there now. You see the direction now, but at that time when Bergeron and Krejci retired, it wasn't there. And then you have to make the decision on Elias Lindholm, which I think we have a question on that too. But yeah, it's like the internal development, I think, is a fair criticism. For at least like that, especially that chunk of time between maybe like 2019 and 2025-ish or something like that. Like that chunk of years where there wasn't a lot of development, like guys that came up. And I mean, Swayman was a good one, I guess, like give credit for Swayman, but in terms of the, centers and defensemen, there was not that much.
To Scott's point, his trades, not perfect. I've loved a lot of his trades. You talk about, you brought up Hampus Lindholm, Bridget. Like, Hampus has had some issues the last couple of years, but that was a good trade at the time. JJ Peterka, as recently Peterka, love Minton, Carlo for Minton in a first home run. Lauko for and Brazeau for Husnudinov. I'll take Kuzi all day. There was the other. What was the other one? Will Zellers, like the Will Zellers trade, like Middlestat and Zellers, pretty much for Coyle. Hell, even Lena Solmark. You got Mark Kaslick and a 2024 first round pick, which ended up being Dean Letourneau. If Dean Letourneau ends up being a top prominent forward for this team, and you don't have him without trading Lena, good hell of a trade. Like, so I won't take his trades away from him. He's hit a lot of those.
I mean the 2019 deadline, Coyle and Johansson. Like,
yep.
That was a good deadline. Now I didn't like the 2020 deadline. It was Richie and Kasha.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even the Rick Nash trade, like I liked that at the time, and unfortunately, he suffers a concussion pretty much right when he gets here, and it's just never the same. But so like that doesn't work out, and Ryan Lindgren has gone on, became a pretty good NHL player now, maybe a little bit on the downslope, but I liked that trade at the time. Like I thought, because if you go back to like 2013 when Bruins and Sweeney was assistant GM at that time, obviously, but they missed out on Iginla, and it felt like they kind of settled for Jágr, and obviously Jágr just did not make much of an impact. I felt like Rick Nash, like that felt more like Iginla to me, where it was like, all right, like that's actually shooting high and going for someone, and it didn't work out, but I did like that at the time.
Mm-hmm. Now, people would say, they would mention Mark Stone, like, Mark Stone didn't end up going for much from Ottawa to Vegas. Like, could the Bruins have been in on that? Ryan McDonough at that same Rick Nash deadline. McDonough went from New York to Tampa. That was a big ad that the Bruins were probably in on. But yeah, of all Sweeney's faults, I'm not gonna rip him on trading. Like, he's been a pretty good trade GM. Any final questions you guys want to get to before we sign off here, or do we want to reserve them for later? We're almost at 2 hours here.
Yeah, we can probably save them for Monday.
Okay. Well, Bridget, any final thoughts?
Well, Monday we're going to do this podcast. But I'm also going to be on Hockey Hub co-hosting with Sophia at 1:00. So, this is probably going to come out almost the same time, but yeah, we might have to record a little earlier on Monday just so that I can do that. But that's it. Just was going to promote that.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you all very much for listening for the 600th time. Here's the 600 more, and we'll talk to you all next week. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.